Roberto Gagliardi has left his position as Director of Football at Notts County Football Club. That's the surprise news that's been announced on Wednesday afternoon. It will have caught many Notts fans by surprise. The tenure of Gagliardi has been a little over 4 months. He arrived on May the 1st and 10 days at the start of September. Now, during that time, he has presided over 11 new signings, including a mixture of permanent deals and loan signings. I think it would be fair to say Roberto's appointment wasn't met with universal popularity among the Notts County faithful. The statement was issued by owners Alexander and Christoph Reach this afternoon. In the statement, they said, "We thank Roberto for his considerable efforts and wish him well for the future. In particular, we would like to recognise his hard work during a very busy transfer window, which saw a number of important signings added to the squad. As we take some time to consider how he might be replaced, we would like to assure supporters that our scouting and recruitment operation will continue unaffected. We remain in close dialogue with our head coach, Martin Patterson, and his staff to ensure they have the support they need to build on our promising start to the season." Well, there's the statement. As I say, I think it's quite surprising news. The brothers are not necessarily ones to make quick decisions. A very short tenure. Now, my understanding of the situation was that rumours of Roberto's departure began to swirl around the club yesterday. Roberto was not in the club today, as I understand it. His working week was spent as much time in London, really, as it was at Meadow Lane, working on Notts County's transfers and recruitment policies. Roberto, I guess, a little bit of a left field appointment when he arrived. Much of that was put. His appointment was down, I think, from a first instance of when he started out on his footballing career as an intern with Football Radar several years ago. He was an analyst for Italian football Serie B. A lot of supporters' views of Roberto were painted based on a short and unsuccessful stint at Leyton Orient. It coincided with an Italian takeover of the club. Roberto was part of that group, held several positions in terms of goalkeeping coach and head of recruitment in the season in which Orient dropped out of the Football League. It was very similar, Orient's demise, to our own under Alan Hardy, falling out of the Football League for the first time in their league existence. Roberto had subsequently held further positions at South Coast clubs Portsmouth and Southampton. One is a director of football, the other a more business-based role, if you like. Lots of conjecture, lots of debate about his departure. Think it probably fair to say this will meet with if not overwhelming, certainly the majority of supporting the decision to relieve him of his duties by the brothers. Think it's quite telling. No quote from Roberto in the press statement. No mention that he's pursuing a career at another club. So the inference at this stage would appear to be that decision was taken using that euphemistic phrase by mutual agreement. But it doesn't kind of talk about Roberto pursuing opportunities elsewhere, etc., etc. Now, the transfer window has now closed, so the majority of, or the overwhelming majority of the recruitment has now been put to bed until the transfer window will reopen in the first week of January. Notts, however, can still loan players out to the National League. Curtis Edwards had his contract terminated and moved to Gateshead, and there may be other movements, as I understand it, out to the National League. also mentions directly Martin Patterson, and the brothers will continue to work closely with him. Um, whether this strengthens the lines of demarcation between Martin Patterson and into the owners. I think previously there was a conduit through Roberto, and I'm not saying this was the case at all, but a lot of the challenges and breakdown, if you like, that appeared to have happened at Nottingham Forest, with Nuno before his departure earlier this week, was after the arrival of a director of football, Edu. So, on the face of it, this would give Martin Patterson some more autonomy. We've not been told yet how this will or won't affect the football technical board, of which Roberto was a part. Clearly, he would not be involved in those meetings anymore. So that effectively, in the technical board, would leave the head coach Martin Patterson, the owners Alexander and Christoph Reitz, and the new head our director of sports science. So that technical committee would appear to be more streamlined. In terms of the recruitment that Roberto was responsible for, well, clearly you would say the shining light was Matthew Dennis, brought in, no fee involved. Leading scorer currently in League Two with 6 goals. So that one's worked extremely well. However, and I hesitate to use the word friction, but I think Martin was quite clear to spell out his desire to have more pieces on the board. And there was a lot of debate about getting a number 9 in before the start of the season. Fortunately, Alessandro Giatta, the club, activated a clause to extend his agreement at Notts through to 2027. So at the minute, we are operating with 2 number 9s, albeit there's not a lot of scope within this group of players to absorb injuries, either in that position, potentially in the goalkeeper position with the only senior, and by that I mean a goalkeeper with professional football senior experience in Calaruz, who was one of the signings made by Roberto Gagliardi. Quite a few people mentioned, and I think this was an interesting debating point, that when Notts sign players, the director of football is the person who is invariably extensively quoted, rather than the head coach. This is something that dates back several years now, when Richard Montague was here. But quotes attributed to Roberto specifically spelled out how he had followed in the instances of Calaruz and Ollie Norburn. He had extensive experience of having followed them. In the case of Ollie Norburn, he'd spoken about at previous clubs where he'd been looking to sign them, and some supporters pointed out that was this then the lead on the recruitment based on the personal opinions of Roberto, or how much of the data model was involved, which normally is the way we're led to believe that the club recruits its players based on data metrics. So I think that was an interesting discussion point. In a statement issued by the owners only last week, and there was no mention of Roberto's future at that point. They did speak, the brothers, at length, and spoke about how the strongest playing budget that had been put together by the brothers since they arrived here. Now, strongest is an interesting word to use, but the obvious surmising from that was this is the biggest playing budget that they have awarded to the club, certainly while it's been in the National League. And on the face of it, I think a lot of supporters would have a healthy debate about whether they think that this is a better squad than the squad that Stuart Maynard went into the season with 13 months ago. Obviously, there was the sale of Alex Bass a few weeks before the start of the season for a six-figure sum. And I think what upset quite a lot of the supporter base was that the club did not agree a new contract with David McGoldrick. Now, Roberto didn't do a lot of media while he was here. He did do one fairly lengthy piece with the club. We'd hoped to get him on this show at the start of the season together with the brothers. That one unfortunately didn't materialise. But I think Roberto in that one said that they'd offered us the best deal that they could, and that he felt David had been replaced. These are all subjective views. I suspect a lot of Notts fans would think that David has potentially not been adequately replaced. So, all of this, what does it mean now? So the club, Alexander and Chris, have kind of looked to buy themselves a little bit of time in terms of their next steps. It appears they're going to replace like for like, but they've not specifically stated that. So I think that will be interesting. But I guess the real immediate need for this kind of position is it is not immediate, because we are now at a situation where the transfer window has closed, so that you are very limited in what you can do. You can bring in free agents and you can loan out players to the National League. Be interesting to see. The brothers have pretty much operated with a director of football, but certainly through the professional EFL seasons, with a full-time DOF, director of football. So will be interesting. Watch this space as to how quickly and as and when they choose to make this appointment. In the interim, you would imagine that Martin Patterson would, if not more of a say, would be the most senior guy in the football club, and as such is likely to be consulted more in terms of any movement in or out. As I say, I think it's come as a surprise to a lot of people. I believe the rumours started to swirl around the club on Tuesday afternoon, and the club have moved pretty quickly to make this announcement. So Roberto Gagliardi leaves or has left the club. Let's see what it brings. It's certainly not been an uneventful start to the season. Off we go now. Off we go to Gillingham, top of the table clash on Saturday. Let's see how we get on there. Those of you who like the show, like and subscribe, the little red button at the bottom. Thank you everyone for dialing into this one. We'll continue to keep you updated, and our next show will be on Friday Night Live from 7 o'clock. Thanks as always to our official partners, JH Accountants, and the Big Shed at Trent Navigation. Cheers for now. Bye bye.